Angry Joe has spent the past month playing Lord of the Rings Gollum instead of playing The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Like, what a complete tool, right? Like, let's ignore the best game of the year. Let's ignore Zelda, one of the most beloved IPs in Zelda, like in gaming. Let's ignore Nintendo. Let's ignore all these better games coming out. Let's play Gollum. Let's spend a month like going through these mediocre stealth sections and then put out a review that nobody's gonna watch because nobody cared to begin with. Like, when I saw this game for the first time, I laughed at it because the idea of like a Gollum game was just so ridiculous to me. Like, it's so obvious that like the Lord of the Rings license has like expired a long time ago. Like, there's no more stories to tell. There's nothing more to do with the IP, but like because it makes money, because people like this will just go like, oh, Lord of the Rings, it's the only fantasy book I've ever read, so I'll buy this game in order to show my support, right? Even though, like, none of these adaptions have been any good. There have been no good, faithful recreations of, like, Tolkien's work. And, like, maybe Tolkien's work wasn't that great to begin with, right? There are things, like, I have never seen a good Lord of the Rings game. So it baffles me that people like this get excited over the license being utilized in this way. And this isn't just for Lord of the Rings. I see the same thing happen with Star Wars. That it's pretty bad with Star Wars. Trek, like literally everything under the sun, Marvel in particular, where like people pretend that like a big license being adjusted into a game is like a big deal. Like, remember when like Arkham City had like the best combat system ever made or something? And it was like super hype when like actual gamers were like kind of shaking their heads at the notion. It was ridiculous. Arkham City was just a complete joke, right? And there are countless examples of that, of just getting excited for the license, but not superior games like that actually take advantage, that are actually like, developed by people who know what they're doing, like original IPs that are developed exclusively for gaming, right? And this has been a problem with Angry Joe for a long time, is that like he just gives so much credence to like these IPs that like just kind of exist. Marvel, Warhammer, and like Star Wars are like the big ones, but I think it also extends to a lot of other things like Lord of the Rings. Like, I think any real gamer, if given a choice between like Zelda and Gollum, would have gone for Zelda. Like, whatever situation you're in, like, there is no denying that like Zelda was like more appealing than Gollum. Like, whatever excuses that like Angry Joe gives in regards to like playing Zelda, I don't know what his official statement is on it. Like, I'm pretty sure like it has something to do with like copyright strikes, which is a load of crap. But I don't believe him when he says that at all, because so many other people are using footage, including myself, are using footage for the game with no problem. So it's just so ridiculous that this guy is seriously like trying to act outraged that this shovelware game from this declining license exists. Like, nobody cares about Gollum. Nobody wants to see you rant and rave over how like Gollum doesn't adhere to like Tolkien's lore, right? Like, that isn't what people wanted to see. Like, people were very specific, with what they wanted from you, and that was for you to play the new Zelda. That was for you to like put an increased focus on Nintendo Switch. That was he hasn't done a Nintendo Direct reaction, right? It's so bizarre how he does reactions to like literally everything else under the sun, but like he'll consistently refuse to do the Nintendo one, right? Like every single time. And like with the Game Awards last year, where like he spurred the fuck out over like Mario Rabbids beating like Dunehammer or like Dune Spice Wars or whatever. Warhammer, yeah, Dunehammer. What am I talking about? Like, you really get the impression, like in moments like that like he really has a problem with Nintendo and their fans. And I really have to like really pose this question to like the community. Like, are we going to continue to allow this guy to badmouth us and the games that we enjoy? Because like the things he says about Nintendo and their games are simply not true. Like, I've heard him say that Nintendo pays for like awards at the Game Awards. I've heard him say that like nothing coming out on the Switch looks interesting. I've heard him like make claims that like Nintendo is making the shift to mobile gaming. Like, I've heard him say like ridiculous shit like Sephiroth should come to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate after he already was released. It wasn't even like the announcement. Like the character was already out. Like you really, he's so out of touch, right? Like he's so out of touch with like what people are actually playing and talking about. Like it just becomes so absurd. And I feel like we're on the verge of more people like starting to call him out because I've seen people like do this thing where they'll make like Angry Joe call out videos like where did Angry Joe go wrong, and they'll try to shift the blame onto Alex. Don't do that. Okay, like you need to stop because Alex is not the problem. I hate Alex's guts. He is absolutely like a problem with the show, but like it's a problem with Joe. It's a problem with like other Joe. It's a problem with like the entire channel, or rather the entire community, the entire thing we have going on YouTube is that like you're just in it for the money and not the passion. You're not actually interested in talking about cool, interesting games. You just want to bitch about nothing for like views and attention. And it's just embarrassing, honestly. Like you're like what, 40 years old, still complaining about like copyright strikes or like, Madden every year. Like when is it going to stop? Like it's just nobody cares really. I do wonder when the dam is going to break, because I do think it's coming. I've been thinking it's coming since like 2018, ever since like the Game of Thrones thing with like season 7 where like people got backlash for like the lack of angry reviews. I think it's coming, right? I think more people are going to get upset at the direction the channel is taking, especially with like the decline of popularity of Marvel. Right? Like, I think that's going to be the big thing that kind of does it, in that, like, he's going to keep doing reviews of Marvel shows that nobody's watching, and people are going to be telling him, like, you should be playing Zelda. You should be, like, talking about the Nintendo Direct. You should be doing this or that, going to this convention. And he's just going to, like, get angrier and angrier, right? And, like, I really wonder, like, when the cracks are going to become more evident to the general population. Because I've been noticing this for a long time. But, like, it just feels like his audience is, like, so brain dead that they don't really pick up on, like, what's kind of obvious to me. And I do want to see it happen, right? Angry Joe is like one of the last YouTubers I want to see. Like I've seen so many other YouTubers like fall into irrelevancy. I think seeing Angry Joe like falling into irrelevancy is probably going to be the last time I feel like any really sort of catharsis from seeing it happen, because I'm not invested in like younger creators. I will never watch them, but like Joe was someone who like people took seriously for a long time, and it's just cucked out at like on so many different issues, Gamergate being the most prominent, but like of course like there have been other things, like the Xbox fanboyism and like the refusal to cover Nintendo content, and just like being a Marvel dick sucker, being like a huge SJW, speaking out against Trump and stuff like that. Like there are so many things you can like talk shit about Angry Joe for, but it hasn't killed his channel yet. And I have to wonder, like, when is it going to happen? Like, how much longer are we going to have to wait? Because it is inevitable. Like, he is going through that same fate, that same, like, arc that, like, Cinemassacre went through. But when is it going to happen? I don't know, but I do believe it will be in the next couple of years.